was awesome. Thanks. It was really, really a pleasure hearing you read. Who's publishing, what press will be publishing the anthology this fall?
I'm not sure what the press is, but did you know the literary magazine Gigantic?
Yeah.
The ones behind it, so.
Okay, I'll check it out because it's definitely something I'd like to carry in the store. Sounds awesome.
They have been awesome.
Is it going to be, is it a very large anthology?
Yeah, there's something like 40 games.
Wow.
Like Jonathan Lethbridge in it, and Amy Bender, and crazy.
Those are a lot of fun. Thanks so much for coming tonight and reading for us. And remember, there is food and stuff like that. Please stick around after Pam reads, and Pam and Kelly will be here to sign books and discuss things and have all kinds of fun with you guys. And we have other books in the store which are a lot of fun too. Hope if you haven't been here that you come back. So Pam Jones is the author of The Biggest Little Bird. Let me read the blurb here on the back as well as Pam's bio, because it gives you an idea of what's going on here. It's different, I would say. In The Biggest Little Bird, Pam Jones' industrious protagonist yearns to build a theme park that will bring glory and wonder into his life. With this premise, Jones plunges readers into the world of mystery and magic that is Icac Pleasure Gardens. Jones's distinct voice carries the reader into the dark underbelly of this theme park and its madcap characters. The underbelly of a theme park. What an idea. With wit and daring, Jones carries a story that will keep readers guessing as they dive into the heart of ambition and just how far people will go to realize their dreams. Now let me read you a little bit about Pam. She's here. Pam Jones is an East Coast native now planting her roots in Austin, Texas. How recently, Pam?
I moved down here. My husband and I moved down here July of last year, so exactly.
Wow, so about a year ago. Welcome. And with her husband, who is here with us, and her cat, who is not. She studied creative writing at Hampshire College and has held down a variety of jobs at YMCA's, at an art gallery, and even as an artist's model. Her writing has appeared in Otolith's e-magazine as Pam Hopkins. So please welcome Pam Jones. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is the first time I've ever done a public reading, so I'm so happy that we have such a great crowd. Thank you so much. What I'm going to read is an excerpt that's kind of in the middle of the book. It doesn't feature the main character, but it certainly will give you an idea of what the park is really like at the core. And I also have a very quiet speaking voice, so if I'm a little too quiet, just tell me to speak up. You always knew at a park when someone grew up. The kids on the ride became town criers when they emerged first, as they always did. Mom, 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 there was this fat boy on the ride with us, and he puked all down his front. You should have been there. It was awful, just awful. This was more or less what was announced when the first two guests came running out, a pair of girls in pink silk dresses. They leapt upon their waiting mother with the news, grinning and boastful that they had bested the ride, and not the poor fool with the tender tummy. In this story, the stricken one was, in fact, a girl, not a boy, and not fat by any means, but slim. To the girls recounting their ride experience, this was a shocking detail. The little girl was quick to point the vomiter out when she emerged, trembling and pale, an arm wrapped stiffly around her middle. Her occupation was the worst that anyone could think of. No guest in the park had to think of it because, unlike the wandering dwarf women, her job had no bearing on paper. Her name was Sonia, followed by an unpronounceable last name that she'd anglicized from its German to something delectable. She called herself Sonia Smitten. Miss Yvette Jonquil had found her earlier that winter. Until then, Sonia had taken up a room at the Silverado Squatters Motel in Calistoga, lumped in a hallway with girls much like herself, young, armed with headshot portfolios and indestructible hopes of being swept away by a handsome prince in the form of a casting director. They all heard that the casting directors had second homes in the Napa Valley, cool among the vineyards. She kept to those who spoke her native German and heard chit-chat in Spanish, Polish, Swedish, Czech, overlapping the diffident talk of the Japanese girls, from whom everyone in the motel kept a polite distance. Not that it mattered, for every girl in the Silverado Squatters washed her clothes in her bathtub. Sonia, like most of them, honed her shoplifting skills since her settlement in California, and she always slipped from supermarkets with treasures beneath her coat: raw bacon, canned tuna fish, Hershey bars. In this place, she also learned how to bring it all up in the toilet bowl and never gain an ounce. As for Miss Yvette Jonquil, she was no myth. She'd been a debutante, a stepdaughter to an oil tycoon who, for sport, turned out an impressive pistachio orchard near the Bixby Canyon, raised llamas, and for a short time locked his daughter away from the world. There was the pregnancy that had to be nipped in the bud. This part of the legend came to an end and was buried under the llama barn. Yvette Jonquil had no baby, but a large fortune that came to her, very mysteriously after her stepfather's death. She continued her daily life as normally as possible before the sidelong glances and the clammed-up horror that made her feel more like Lizzie Borden than herself forced her to hide from the world again. She shut herself in at 29, a slim beauty with chestnut curls, and emerged shrunken, deflated, bird-like in her fur coats and enormous glasses. She heard under this luxurious armor that Yvette Jonquil had poisoned the Pistachio King, made it look like a heart attack. But years passed, and with them so did many of the stories, and even the memory of what Yvette Jonquil looked like. Now she was an old biddy with more money than God. In the first months of the Ick story, not long after Arnold Shake's initial fiasco, she met him in the privacy of the 1919 Rolls-Royce. Shake recognized her from the start by her money and not her folktale. She had never attended a theme park in her life and was intrigued by the idea that people would willingly sit in a contraption to scare the daylights out of themselves. Whether her heart's desire was to expose her stepfather's brutishness or to stave off her Black Widow reputation, she volunteered her part happily. She listened to Shake's Ick saga with more interest than she thought she would. She knew that she'd never scrub out that black stain that seemed to mark her in every eye that took her in her roles, the little face in all those coats. Would this story have any room for me? She'd asked Shake. It would complicate the plot, but people, she assured him, would be smart enough to piece it together. Better she were remembered for abandoning her child, little Elijah Ick what's-his-name, than coming to his rescue, giving him up to a loving home with a midget. She promised Shake that it would sell. She had a single suggestion. She felt that the rides were too soft in themselves. People responded to hearsay so readily, didn't they? Hadn't Shake noticed that guests, especially this teenage generation, piled onto those Zoomerang rides if they heard about the number of people who'd lost their lunch on them? Suppose the park hired someone, an actor of sorts, to do just that. There'd be no maintenance for costumes, as the actor didn't need anything dry cleaned. The park could provide changes of clothes from the Goodwill. Shake had balked at the idea. Maybe the dark leather atmosphere of the roles was getting to him. There is no method actor out there who would even think about it. How would you keep this quiet? People know to join some kind of actors union these days. Suppose something happens, they could sue. Not to worry, Miss Jonquil said. She knew just where to look. The Silverado Squatters was something of a roadside attraction, the way it was set up by Highway 29. Any passing motorist could watch that flock of foreigners yammering and pecking away at each other in the motel courtyard. She came upon the Silverado Squatters in her roles, alone at the wheel this time after overhearing a Polish bus girl at a Calistoga restaurant mention where she lived. It was a brown stucco box shaded by dead live oaks and, what luck, home to 15 or so girls. Miss Jonquil took a few steps closer, stalking her catch. It took her this little distance from the girls to notice a similarity in all of them. They stroked a downy fur over their arms, twisted the brittle hairs with yellowed nails and scabbed fingers. They smiled with yellowed teeth, leading one's stare from the wet pinkness of their made-up eyes, the swollenness of their cheeks. She need only choose one, just one for now. She would choose the girl who didn't move as she walked toward them over the dusty forecourt. The darker ones fled first, the slant-eyed ones and the Italians and the Spaniards, then the two blonde girls who skipped to the side to let her pass. They went on scattering, behind closed doors or to the fringes of the forecourt, afraid that she was a government somebody or other hunting for immigration papers. Miss Jonquil pressed on to this girl, chestnut hair chopped short around the ears. She could have been herself in a younger, if not happier day. The girl didn't move. It was not of stubbornness, more out of the raw fear that a beast gives before it becomes a meal. Miss Jonquil said only, "How many times a day do you do that?" She took the girl, Sonia's hand, flexing the index finger, scabbed red and crusty yellow on the knuckle. As a girl, a stupid, stupid girl, she'd branded herself in the same way, and she couldn't help but notice these signs of self-imposed decay in every bright young thing. Sonia could have pretended that her English was not so good, but she absorbed body language as she absorbed the leopard coat and the amber-rimmed sunglasses like insect eyes, with her nose, the tip of her tongue, the fine hairs that made 1,000 tiny little erections on her arms. The woman was too curious. Sonia sweated a little less at this, let her nose tell her what this woman in fur was all about. Miss Jonquil exuded an old but pricey perfume that wafted out from her coat in lemony clouds. Her grip on Sonia's hand was gentle in a buttery leather glove. She had no plan to grab hold of her if she tried to run away. She was only waiting for an answer. The old woman rephrased the question. How many times a day can you do that? Sonia led the older woman down the concrete walk, passing screen doors to the other rooms. The girls peeped out, a few of them scoffing. Sonia kept going and unlocked the door to her little room. A corner of the screen flapped down when she held it open for Miss Jonquil. The overhead bulb in the bathroom set a less climactic scene than Sonia would have liked, but the muscle memory came in a rush. See the bowl, get the first finger in, touch the back of the throat just so. Her sandwiches, cheese and tuna, came up just like that. She looked to Miss Jonquil. She'd done it so neatly, no trace of spittle remained. The old woman raised her eyebrows over her insect sunglasses. You do this after every meal, she said, loosening the collar of her coat. It was stuffy in this dark little room. She spoke slowly this time. Sonia's lips moved. She repeated the question to herself to make sure she understood. When she did, she answered, yes, or almost every meal. It was good enough. Miss Jonquil said she would take her to the Ekak Pleasure Gardens in the morning and move her to somewhere more comfortable. Miss Jonquil guaranteed her a salary of $30 a week, plus a bonus of $5 more every time she vomited on a ride. Soon, Sonia was moved into a boarding house in Napa, clean, cozy, populated again by European girls who found better luck in the entertainment circuit with lingerie modeling. Sonia was not, Miss Jonquil commanded, to speak of her line of work, for it could mean bad things for the park, thus worse things for her. She thought of herself as a prize, snatched up by a steel claw, dropped in a snowbank in Hamburg. She kept her mouth shut. Sonia had heard the name before, Ekak. It was such a strange name. Ekak was a man who lived right near this very spot. He managed to keep youthful until his last breath. He had a grand fortune hidden in the walls of a little mountain shack. It wasn't there anymore. It just disappeared when he died, someone said. That he'd saved up for his family to build this new Garden of Eden with carousels and prizes and all-you-can-eat lunches for anyone in the world to enjoy. She'd seen the issues of Life magazine about the descendants, a great-nephew and his sister's families. She couldn't really read the article, just looked at the pictures. The photograph showed a young man with dark hair, heavy with oil parted on the side. His gaze was focused somewhere off camera, right beside him, as though the world had its dropping off point right there at the end of the couch he was sitting on, and one wrong move could send him toppling over. She would think, instead, of the here and now. She looked 18, but in truth was closer to 30. She corralled her R's, she broke them in so that when she spoke, the Sudetenland growl was softened to the purr of neutral Switzerland. Even as late as 1960, she would never have told an American that she'd learned to light campfires for Der Fuhrer. The night before she left Hamburg, she lit a campfire of her own and fed it her girlhood photos. Her Bunddeutsche model jacket had gone to the flames years before, but the evidence of having worn it, with braided hair and good cheer, had lived long enough. Ashes to ashes and all that. The little BDM scout went quietly, bubbled and blackened into the kindling until nothing was left. Let's see. Is there anything more you'd like me to read or any questions I can answer? And that's really it.